A cruel crown princess humiliates an old palace gatekeeper for years, only to discover that his humble son is the mysterious man she can never forget, a revelation that threatens love, power, and the royal throne itself. I need your support. Please subscribe my channel. The palace of King Victor Ezer stood like a symbol of perfection. Its tall golden gates opened into a world of shining cars, expensive fountains, carefully trimmed gardens, and silent workers moving quickly across the wide compound. From the outside, anyone looking at the royal home would think peace lived there forever. But behind those beautiful walls, something painful was slowly growing. King Victor Ezer, once known as one of the strongest businessmen in the country, had become weak from illness. Some mornings, he sat quietly in his private room staring through the window for hours, while doctors moved in and out with worried faces. His empire, Royal Springwater, still carried his name with pride, but the family carrying that name was beginning to fall apart. And at the center of that silent destruction were his two daughters. Amaka, the younger princess, carried responsibility like a burden nobody else could see. Every morning before sunrise, she left for the company while most people were still sleeping. She checked reports, settled business problems, spoke respectfully to workers, and fought every day to stop the company from collapsing under hidden debts. She was calm, gentle, humble. The workers loved her because she listened before speaking. But her elder sister Cassie was the complete opposite. Cassie loved attention, luxury, parties, and power. She walked through the palace like someone born to control everyone around her. Workers trembled whenever they heard her footsteps because nobody knew what mood she would bring. One moment she laughed loudly. The next moment she humiliated someone in front of everyone. And the person who suffered most was the old gatekeeper, Mr. Okoy. Mr. Okoy had served the royal family for many years. His face looked tired, but his eyes carried quiet wisdom. He greeted everyone respectfully and never argued with anyone, even when insulted. But Cassie never respected him. To her, he was only the gateman. That afternoon, the palace compound was busy under the hot sun when Cassie stepped outside with her wealthy friends beside her. Her dark glasses rested proudly on her face while her expensive heels clicked sharply against the ground. Then her eyes landed on Mr. Okoy. "You," she snapped loudly. The old man turned immediately and bowed his head slightly. "Good afternoon, princess." Cassie scoffed. "Do not greet me like we are friends. What exactly do you do in this palace besides standing around uselessly?" The younger guards nearby became uncomfortable. One slowly stepped back, avoiding eye contact. But Mr. Okoy remained calm. "I am at my duty post, princess." Cassie laughed coldly. "Duty post? You call this duty? Lazy old man." Amaka had just stepped outside carrying office files when she heard the shouting. She froze immediately. Her chest tightened painfully as she watched the humiliation continue. Why does she enjoy hurting people so much? Amaka thought sadly. Chief Lawrence, the king's younger brother, tried to calm Cassie down. "Cassie, enough. He is old enough to deserve respect." But Cassie turned on him instantly. "And who asked for your opinion?" The compound became silent. Even her own friends looked embarrassed. Still, Mr. Okoy said nothing. Not because he was weak, but because some people carry painful secrets quietly. Amaka lowered her eyes, ashamed of what her family had become. The palace looked rich from outside, but inside, love had slowly been replaced by pride, anger, and hidden pain. And nobody yet realized that one secret connected to the old gatekeeper would soon shake the entire royal family forever. Morning sunlight covered the royal palace, but peace did not enter with it. The compound was already busy with workers cleaning, guards changing shifts, and drivers preparing luxury cars for the day's movement. Everything looked organized on the outside. Then Cassie appeared. Her expensive perfume filled the air before her voice did. She walked down the palace steps wearing dark glasses and carrying anger like it belonged to her. Behind her, Bella and Ella followed silently, already sensing trouble. Near the gate, Mr. Okoy stood speaking calmly to a younger security guard when Cassie suddenly stopped. "You useless old man," she shouted. The entire compound froze. Mr. Okoy quickly turned and bowed his head slightly. "Good morning, princess." Cassie walked toward him slowly, her heels striking the ground sharply. "Do not greet me. Look at my car." The old man looked toward the shining black car parked nearby. What about it, princess? Cassie slapped the bonnet angrily. I told you this car should be spotless. Are you blind now too? The younger guards exchanged nervous glances. The car was already clean. Even the windows reflected sunlight perfectly. But nobody dared speak. Mr. Okoy answered gently. The car was washed last night, princess. Cassie's face darkened immediately. So now you are calling me a liar?
No, princess.
I only meant. Before he could finish, Cassie pushed him hard on the shoulder. You talk too much for a mere gateman. A shocked silence spread across the compound. Amaka had just stepped out of her car when she witnessed everything. Her heart sank instantly. This is getting worse every day, she thought painfully. She rushed forward at once. Cassie, please stop. Cassie turned sharply. Oh, here comes the perfect daughter. Amaka ignored the insult and looked at Mr. Okoy's trembling hands. The old man still refused to defend himself. The car is clean, Amaka said softly. And washing cars is not even part of his duty. Cassie laughed bitterly. So now you are defending servants against your own sister? I am defending what is right. Those words only made Cassie angrier. You always act innocent, she snapped. Everybody praises you because you pretend to be humble. Amaka remained calm, though her chest ached. This is not about me. No, Cassie said coldly. This is about power. And everybody in this palace forgets who the real crown princess is. At that moment, King Victor's voice suddenly came from behind them. Enough. Everyone turned immediately. The king stood near the palace entrance, supported slightly by his walking stick. His face looked weak from illness, but disappointment burned clearly in his eyes. Cassie folded her arms. Father, stay out of this. The king stared at her silently for a moment. When did disrespect become your language? He asked quietly. Cassie scoffed. Everybody is overreacting because of one old gatekeeper. King Victor looked toward Mr. Okoy with sadness. A person's position does not remove their dignity. Cassie rolled her eyes. Father, this man is beneath us. The king's expression hardened. No human being is beneath you. The compound became silent again. Even Bella and Ella lowered their eyes in shame. But Cassie only laughed softly, completely untouched by the pain she caused around her. Then she walked away proudly, leaving silence behind her like a wound. Amaka stood there feeling helpless as Mr. Okoy quietly returned to his duty post without complaint. And for the first time, King Victor looked at his daughter not only with disappointment, but with fear. Because what happens when power enters the hands of someone without kindness? The palace was beginning to discover the answer. The night air outside Royal Springwater felt unusually cold. Most workers had already gone home, and the company parking lot stood nearly empty under the dim security lights. Inside her office, Amaka sat alone reviewing financial reports for the third time that evening. Her tired eyes moved slowly across the papers, but her mind remained trapped inside the problems waiting for her at home and at work. Her father was getting weaker. The company was drowning in hidden debts. And Cassie's behavior was becoming impossible to control. Amaka closed the file slowly and rubbed her forehead. How much longer can I carry all of this alone? She finally stood up, gathered her handbag, and walked toward the parking area. The silence around her felt heavy, almost uncomfortable. Even the wind sounded restless. Then suddenly, footsteps. Fast footsteps. Before she could turn properly, two men appeared from the darkness. One grabbed her handbag violently while the other tried pulling her backward. Amaka gasped in fear. Leave me alone. Her voice echoed sharply through the empty parking lot. The taller man covered her mouth roughly. Keep quiet. Panic rushed through her body. She struggled desperately, but the men were stronger. For one terrifying moment, Amaka truly believed nobody would come. Then another voice cut through the darkness. Hey! The attackers turned instantly. A young man ran toward them without hesitation. Everything happened quickly after that. He pushed one attacker away from Amaka and fought the second man before the first could recover. The parking lot exploded into chaos. Footsteps, shouting, fists striking against metal cars. Amaka stumbled backward, shaking badly. The stranger fought with desperate courage, not like someone trying to show off, but like someone protecting another human being without thinking about himself. Finally, the attackers fled into the darkness. Silence returned. Heavy breathing filled the air. Amaka looked at the young man standing a few steps away from her. His shirt was slightly torn, and one side of his face carried a fresh bruise. Yet his eyes remained calm. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. Amaka could barely speak.
No. I'm okay.
The stranger nodded once. Good. He turned slightly as if preparing to leave. "Wait," Amaka said quickly. "Please, who are you?" The young man gave a small smile. "Just someone passing by." Before she could thank him properly, he walked away into the night. And disappeared. Amaka stood frozen beside her car, staring after him. Who risks their life for a stranger and asks for nothing in return? Days passed, but she never forgot his face. Then fate surprised her. One morning at Royal Springwater, Amaka sat in her office preparing for staff interviews when her assistant Jenny entered. "The final candidate is here, Ma." Amaka nodded tiredly. "Send him in." The office door opened slowly. And the moment the young man stepped inside, Amaka's heart stopped. It was him. The stranger from the parking lot. He looked just as surprised. "Good morning, Ma," he said politely, holding a brown envelope carefully in his hands. Amaka stood slowly from her chair. "You?" The young man blinked in confusion. "Yes, Ma. You saved my life." Recognition entered his eyes immediately. "Oh." For the first time in days, Amaka smiled genuinely. "I looked for you." The young man lowered his head slightly. "I've struggled for a long time. I just want an opportunity to prove myself." Amaka studied his face quietly.
No pride. No fake charm.
Just sincerity. And somehow, that touched her deeply. "You're qualified," she finally said. "The position is yours." Chidi blinked in shock. "Really?" Amaka smiled gently. "Yes. I trust honest people." Neither of them knew it yet. But that simple meeting was the beginning of a connection powerful enough to change both their lives forever. The Royal Company building stood tall against the golden evening sky, but inside its walls, pressure and fear quietly followed every employee like a shadow. For months, the company had been sinking deeper into financial trouble. Investors were losing confidence, workers feared losing their jobs, and King Victor's health had started to weaken under the stress. Yet every morning, Amaka arrived before everyone else, carrying the heavy burden of protecting both her family name and the thousands of lives connected to the company. And now, somehow, Chidi had become part of that fight. At first, he remained distant and careful, speaking only when necessary. He dressed simply, avoided attention, and worked harder than anyone else in the office. But little by little, Amaka began to notice something different about him. His ideas were brilliant. His honesty was rare. And his calm presence brought her a strange sense of peace she had not felt in years. Late one evening, the office lights flickered softly as rain tapped against the large glass windows. Most workers had already gone home, leaving only Amaka and Chidi sitting across from each other in the conference room surrounded by paperwork and financial reports. "We may have only 2 weeks left before the board removes control from your family," Chidi said gently. Amaka lowered her eyes in exhaustion. "I know," she whispered. "Sometimes it feels impossible." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Chidi slowly pushed a file toward her. "I studied the overseas contracts," he explained. "There's still one way to save everything." Amaka opened the file carefully, her eyes widening as she realized he had found mistakes that senior executives had failed to notice for months. "How did you even see this?" she asked softly. Chidi smiled faintly. "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything." His words carried hidden pain he never fully explained. And somehow, that sadness made Amaka trust him even more. "Why does my heart feel safe around him?" she wondered quietly. Days turned into weeks. Together, they rebuilt damaged contracts, negotiated with angry investors, and worked through endless nights. Employees slowly began smiling again as hope returned to the company halls. But while love quietly grew between Amaka and Chidi, danger was also growing nearby. Across the city, Cassie sat alone in her luxurious bedroom, staring at an old photograph hidden inside her drawer. Years ago, during a reckless trip abroad filled with parties and careless decisions, she had met a mysterious young man who treated her differently from everyone else. For one brief night, she had seen kindness instead of greed, honesty instead of fear. And ever since then, she had secretly searched for him. "I have to find him," Cassie whispered to herself. "No matter what it takes." What she did not know was that fate had already brought that man back into her life. Very close to her. Closer than she could ever imagine. One evening, Amaka and Chidi stood together on the company balcony, overlooking the glowing city lights below. The wind moved softly around them as exhaustion and unspoken feelings filled the silence. "You've changed this company," Amaka said quietly. Chidi looked at her gently. "No," he replied. "You did. I only reminded you how strong you already were." Her eyes softened. And for the first time in years, Amaka smiled not as a princess, but simply as a woman learning how to love again. Sometimes the people who heal our hearts arrive when life feels most broken. The palace was alive with celebration that evening. Golden lights shimmered across the marble halls, servants moved quickly carrying expensive trays of food, and soft music echoed through the enormous royal dining room. After weeks of hard work, the company had finally begun recovering, and King Victor had personally invited Chidi to the palace to thank him for helping save the family business. But destiny had prepared something far greater than celebration. As Amaka walked beside Chidi through the palace entrance, pride quietly filled her heart. For the first time in many years, she felt hopeful about the future. "You do not have to feel nervous," she told him gently. Chidi smiled softly. "I'm not nervous," he replied. "I just never imagined I would stand inside a place like this." Before Amaka could answer, the large palace gates slowly opened. And standing beside them, dressed in his old uniform, was Mr. Okoy. The elderly gatekeeper froze instantly. The tray in his hands trembled violently as his eyes locked onto Chidi's face. For a brief second, the entire world seemed to stop. "Chidi," the old man whispered weakly. Chidi's expression changed completely. His breathing became heavy as shock spread across his face. "Father." Amaka turned suddenly in confusion. The guards stared. The servants gasped quietly. Even King Victor slowly rose from his chair in disbelief. Mr. Okoy's eyes filled with tears as he stepped forward carefully, almost afraid the moment was not real. "My son," he whispered again. Without hesitation, Chidi rushed toward him, embracing the old man tightly in front of everyone. The palace fell into complete silence. For years, nobody inside those walls had known that the humble gatekeeper had a son. Mr. Okoy had hidden his personal struggles quietly while enduring humiliation, insults, and disrespect every single day. And now the successful young man who had helped save the royal company was his child. Amaka covered her mouth in shock. How many times did we overlook his pain without ever asking about his life? Tears gathered in Mr. Okoy's eyes as he held Chidi's face gently. "You came back," he whispered emotionally. "After all these years, you came back." But before anyone could fully absorb the moment, another voice suddenly broke the silence. "No, it can't be." Cassie stood frozen near the staircase above them, her face pale with disbelief. Her hands trembled as she stared directly at Chidi. The room slowly turned toward her. And then, realization struck her like lightning. It was him. The same man from years ago. The same mysterious stranger she had searched for endlessly after that reckless night abroad. The one man who had seen beyond her beauty, beyond her wealth, beyond her pride. The man she could never forget. Chidi slowly lifted his eyes toward Cassie. The moment their gazes met, painful memories flooded back instantly. Cassie's breathing became uneven. "You," she whispered softly. Amaka looked between them in confusion. "You know each other?" Cassie stepped backward slowly, overwhelmed by emotion she could no longer hide. For the first time in her life, the proud princess who mocked others looked completely broken. And suddenly, every cruel word she had ever spoken to Mr. Okoy returned to haunt her heart. How could she have humiliated the father of the very man she had spent years desperately searching for? What happens when pride finally collides with truth? The palace that once hid secrets behind luxury now stood exposed under the weight of destiny. Sometimes life reveals the value of people only after pride has already caused deep The palace that once glowed with celebration now felt cold and dangerous. Silence filled the royal hall after Cassie's shocking confession. Every servant, every guard, every member of the royal family stood frozen beneath the heavy tension spreading through the room. Cassie slowly walked down the grand staircase, her eyes never leaving Chidi. "I finally found you," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "After all these years." Amaka stared at her sister in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she asked quietly. Cassie ignored her completely. She stepped closer to Chidi, almost desperate now. "You disappeared without a word," she whispered. "I searched for you everywhere." The memories came rushing back into Chidi's mind, the reckless night abroad, the emotional conversation they once shared, the young woman hiding pain behind arrogance and luxury. But that was long before he met Amaka. Long before love changed everything. "Cassie," Chidi said carefully, "that night meant something different to both of us." But Cassie refused to listen. "No," she interrupted firmly. "You belong with me." The entire palace gasped softly. Then, without warning, Cassie turned toward King Victor. "I want to marry him." The words struck Amaka like a knife through her heart. For a moment, she could not breathe. Her hands trembled at her sides as she looked toward Chidi, silently praying he would deny everything immediately. But Chidi remained speechless, trapped between past mistakes and present love. "Why does it feel like my entire world is collapsing in front of me?" Amaka thought painfully. King Victor's face darkened with anger and fear. "Cassie," he warned sharply, "this is not the time for childish obsession." But Cassie's expression only hardened. "For once in my life, I know exactly what I want," she replied. "And I will not lose him again." The room exploded into arguments. Amaka finally stepped backward, unable to bear the pain any longer. Tears burned in her eyes as she quietly left the royal hall without another word. Chidi immediately tried to follow her. But before he could move, Mr. Okoy suddenly spoke. "Enough." His voice echoed through the palace with unexpected authority. Everyone fell silent. The old gatekeeper slowly removed his cap, revealing a sadness he had hidden for decades. "There is something all of you deserve to know," he said weakly. King Victor instantly stepped forward. "No," the king warned. "Not here." But Mr. Okoy shook his head. "The truth has been buried long enough." Fear spread across the king's face for the first time in years. Cassie frowned in confusion. "What truth?" Mr. Okoy looked toward Chidi with tears filling his tired eyes. Then he turned toward the royal family. "Many years ago," he began slowly, "before this palace became consumed by greed and power, there was a terrible betrayal." The room became deadly silent. King Victor closed his eyes painfully, as though haunted by old sins. Mr. Okoy continued carefully. "Chidi's mother was not just an ordinary woman." Chidi's expression changed instantly. "What are you saying?" Mr. Okoy's voice trembled. "She once belonged to this royal family." The palace erupted into shock. Even Cassie stepped backward in disbelief. And suddenly, the foundation of the royal throne itself began to crack beneath the weight of hidden secrets. Could the man both sisters loved be connected to the palace in ways nobody imagined? Outside, thunder roared across the dark sky as rain crashed against the palace windows like a warning from heaven itself. Sometimes the greatest danger is not the truth we